Welcome to the Fiduciary Wise Podcast. I'm Kate McBride, one of your hosts from Fiduciary Wise. Whether you're a thought leader, service provider, CEO, or decision maker, this podcast is for you. We break down the best practices, the services and solutions that are available to you, discuss the latest topics, and shake up the industry norms. Join us as we explore, challenge, and navigate the future of fiduciary responsibility together. I am an accredited investment fiduciary analyst, a Center for Fiduciary Excellence analyst, and a board-certified fiduciary. With Fiduciary Wise, I'm an ERISA 402A specialist, a member of the Department of Labor ERISA Advisory Council. My guest today is James W. Watkins III. He's a lawyer, CFP Emerita, and an accredited wealth management advisor. He's a good friend of both myself and Fiduciary Wise, and I am thrilled to have him with us. Jim, let me just give everybody a little bit about your background. Jim has been an attorney and a member of the State Bar of Georgia since 1981 and has extensive experience in securities and ERISA law. Since 1995, he has held compliance-related positions, including serving as manager of the Registered Investment Advisor Compliance Department at FSC Securities in Atlanta, Georgia. He's director of the peer review department of the CFP Board of Standards, where he supervised the board's disciplinary investigations and operations, overseeing all disciplinary hearings, and national director of the financial planning quality assurance at AXA Advisors. He holds a BA in political science, cum laude, from Georgia State University, and is a graduate of the University of Notre Dame School of Law. So let's jump into our topic. Investment management for 401k plans. What's important for plan sponsors to know, and who can help them manage the plan under ERISA, trust law, and court cases? Employers sponsoring a plan for employees may be surprised to learn that they can delegate some of their fiduciary tasks and legal and financial liabilities to professional ERISA fiduciaries. And not only can they do this, in fact, the law says that if they are not expert in certain tasks and responsibilities that they must do for the plan, if they're not experts, they need to delegate. If this delegation is done correctly, this will do two big things. It'll improve the employee's plan, and it'll reduce the employer's risk substantially. Jim, let's get right into the investment management discussion. So, to you, what are the most important things that plan sponsors need to know about or think about regarding the plan's core investment menu?
I think the most important thing that they need to understand, and the most common mistake I see, is not really understanding what ERISA requires them to do and what they're not required to do under ERISA. And because they get involved in trying to serve too many functions, they end up needlessly exposing themselves to fiduciary liability. So understand ERISA. That's the first thing whenever I get a new client. My specialty is fiduciary risk management. So the very first question I always ask them is, have you ever even looked at ERISA? And the second thing I think is to make the plan. We use an acronym in my company, KISS. And a lot of people are familiar with that, but they're not. We changed it a little, and we promote keep it simple and smart. If you keep it simple, it hopefully results in greater participation. And as far as smart, I consider that compliance with ERISA, namely diversification and cost efficiency of the investment options within the plan.
So that would appear to be a very simple thing, except it's kind of complicated to actually do, right? In terms of when you look at plans, are they always being compliant in that keep it simple and smart?
No, I get a lot of looks when I speak, and I tell people that in my opinion, based on my experience, 95% of the ERISA plans that I've seen can be successfully sued. Because remember, under the Northwestern decision, Hughes versus Northwestern, the Supreme Court made it very clear that you can't have any imprudent investments. You've got to ensure that every investment option offered within the plan is prudent. But I don't think that's that difficult, Kate, because one of the things that amazes me is that the business world uses cost benefit analysis every day to determine the viability of a project.
Yes.
The financial services industry doesn't. I think we know why. But if you're the plan sponsor, if it doesn't pass a simple cost benefit analysis, as I tell my clients, why go there?
Hey, I'm Isaac Wood with Fiduciary Wise. With years of experience helping plan sponsors, TPAs, record keepers, and advisors navigate the complexities of retirement plans, I understand that every client has unique needs. That's why our MEP, PEP, and DC group of plan services offer complete customization. Whether you're managing multiple plans or looking to streamline administration, we tailor solutions that fit your goals while also ensuring compliance with ERISA regulations. At Fiduciary Wise, we don't just offer cookie cutter options. We work closely with you to design a plan that maximizes efficiency, minimizes risk, and gives you the control that you need. Imagine the confidence of knowing that you have an experienced team behind you, guiding you every step of the way. If you're ready to take your retirement plan to the next level, let's connect. You can schedule a meeting at fiduciarywise.com/scheduling to see how we can help.
Exactly. And when we talk about this all the time at Fiduciary Wise as well, because we're always looking at every day, we're looking at portfolios that are of the investment menus in plans. Even though we are not investment advisors and we don't advise on those, we do look at them because we want to make sure that they are cost efficient, safe, and high quality. So one of the things that strikes me as something that not all plan sponsors know is that they may not be getting advice that is, let me back up. A lot of the time, plan sponsors think that they have handed over the investments to an advisor that they've hired to come in and look at those investments. But let's talk about the difference between a consultant, a 321 investment advisor, and a 338 investment manager, because delegation to one of those is much more helpful to plan sponsors in terms of liability than the others. So let's talk about 321. Well, let's talk about investment consultant first.
Okay, before we even go there, let's address the issue that I thought you were going to go to, and that is the fact that you can hire an outside advisor, and you can assign the responsibilities to oversee the plan. You
Yes.
cannot, yeah, you know what I'm going to say, and that is you
Go ahead.
cannot delegate away the ultimate liability. Because as the plan sponsor, if a plan sponsor hires Fiduciary Wise, that plan sponsor still has a responsibility to oversee and verify Fiduciary Wise's work. So
That's right. They have to monitor us and they can fire us anytime. That's right.
the 321 and 336, the 321 is simply oversight. They do not accept responsibility or determine the actual investments within the plan. 338, you're in essence turning over full management of the plan. You are selecting the investments, but again, they may be liable to you contractually, but if you're sitting there and you're not supervising them and they include cost efficient or otherwise imprudent, the plan sponsor still is responsible for that violation.
So if you delegate the investment advice to a 321 investment advisor, they can tell you, here's an array of funds that I think, that I have looked at, and these are cost efficient, and these are, most of them are index funds, and we have a couple of actively managed funds that score well on all the metrics that we use in there. And this is what we recommend for the plan. Now, if they're an investment consultant or a 321 investment advisor to the plan, they recommend that to the plan sponsor, but the sponsor holds on to that responsibility of saying yes or no to that recommendation. So there's not a lot of fiduciary responsibility or liability lifted off the shoulders of that plan sponsor. There's still a co-fiduciary with that 338 investment advisor for the investments in the plan. But I think it's a little bit different, a lot different, if they select a 338 investment manager to select, monitor, and replace the investment options that are in the plan, because they're not just making a recommendation. This 338 investment manager is actually managing the core investments of the plan, and that liability is on them now contractually. If you do it right and you delegate it in your investment policy and it's in the contract, then you have moved some liability to that 338, the liability for those investment options. What do you see when you have, cases that involve, do you have a lot of, or testify in a lot of court cases on ERISA plans that involved having a 338, or are they mostly cases that didn't have a 338?
I think earlier on we saw a lot of 338. Now that they understand the risk element and that they can't just turn it over to somebody and walk away. I personally am seeing more 321s. And back to your point on 321s, if you look at a 321 I've had a lot of people call, how do I know what they're going to serve as? Or is it a 338 or a 321? And I tell them the key language to look in the contract, in a 321 contract, it will explicitly say that the plan sponsor understands and agrees that they retain ultimate responsibility for actually choosing the investment. It's like you said, we're going to recommend some products that we think are viable. We are not making that decision. The ultimate decision, and therefore the liability, is yours.
So that what you're talking about is the 321 contract, right? That where they're
That's
not
the
catching that
321.
liability, right? The plan sponsor is
Right.
delegating to them, but they're still a co-fiduciary, plan sponsor and the investment advisor. But if you go to the 338 and you've delegated to that 338, you actually have taken that responsibility for selecting the plan options and put it onto the 338 professional's shoulders, that professional investment manager. So they are supposed to now contractually, and it should be in the contract. So plan sponsor should look in the contract for that, and in the IPS for that delegation is there. You've delegated as the plan sponsor to that 338 investment manager the selection, monitoring, and replacement of those investment options. And that actually does take liability away.
That's correct.
From the plan sponsor. So that's an interesting thing to do. Now, not every plan sponsor wants to actually give up that control. I think some plans, they feel like they have some kinds of funds they'd like to invest in the plan, and so they don't want to give all of that up to a 338 investment manager. So I don't know that they always know that if they don't give up that responsibility for the plan investment options to the 338, that they're retaining that responsibility for the ultimate yes or no to the recommendations that are being given. So that's something that I think should be more widely known. It really isn't. So hopefully this will just go viral and people will understand it after, this comes out. But in addition to, talking 338, 321 and consultant, this delegation piece is really a key piece of it, because if you haven't delegated, then you really haven't turned that responsibility over to the person that you're hiring to do this for you. So that's a contractual thing.
The main thing I stress to people is I tell them, if you're considering a 338, because to a lot of people it seems perfect, just like you said, they don't understand the liability issues. And I tell them, before you retain somebody for a 338, you ask them, and they've got to provide you the processes they use, what standards they use in the course of applying those processes. But I see far too many people just say, oh, you're going to be a 338? Here, go with it. And that's where they get in trouble.
What do you think about the issue of delegation in the IPS? If they don't, what if a plan doesn't have an IPS? Should they all have an IPS? An investment policy statement?
There are two trains of thought there. I think you should. The you get some attorneys that say don't have an IPS because mean attorneys like me are going to ask for that immediately. And if you don't follow the IPS, it's not going to be good for you. But if you don't have an IPS, a mean attorney like me is going to point out you were just shooting from the hip.
Yeah.
There's you've got to show a procedure. You've got to show that you knew what you were doing and that there was a process. We just had this issue come up in the Home Depot case where the plan, well, the 11th Circuit ruled in favor of Home Depot and said there's no issue here about informational disadvantage because the plan sponsor has the minutes from the meetings. And what was interesting was Home Depot was arguing against them, saying, well, the minutes don't accurately reflect all the meetings we had or what we discussed. So you need an IPS to establish a procedure and that you acted prudently by following whatever is set out in the IPS.
Hi, I'm Kate McBride with Fiduciary Wise. Did you know that if you sponsor a retirement plan, if you sign the plan's Form 5500, more than 92% of the fiduciary risks and liability can fall directly on your shoulders? ERISA's complex regulations make it easy to miss key responsibilities and leave you exposed to costly penalties or legal action. At Fiduciary Wise, we help you manage that risk. We become the plan's named fiduciary, taking on the majority of those responsibilities. We work with your current service providers, including the investment manager, advisor, record keeper, and administrator, to ensure regulatory compliance. And we handle the heavy lifting so you don't have to. Our team is dedicated to protecting you and running your plan exclusively in the best interest of your employees, reducing your exposure to liability and giving you peace of mind. When you partner with Fiduciary Wise, you can focus on running your business, knowing that your retirement plan is in safe hands. Let's talk about how we can help shield you from fiduciary risk. Schedule a meeting today at fiduciarywise.com/scheduling. I always look at an IPS like a roadmap, and if you don't have a roadmap, how are you going to get where you want to go? To me, it's that simple, and it is a place, in addition to the contract from your 338, that you say, the plan sponsor can say, I have delegated this responsibility for picking, selecting, monitor, and replacing the investment lineup to a 338. They have full delegation responsibility. It's off of me, and I love that ability to transfer that way for the plan sponsor, because as ERISA says, if you are not an expert in an area of the law when it comes to retirement plans, you should delegate to a prudent person who can help you. So, all right, let's move off of 321, 338 and talk about quality, safety, and efficiency, cost efficiency. Are you seeing a lot of lawsuits that are talking about the lack sometimes of cost efficiency in the investment options, and what do we do about that?
Well, you know what I'm about to say on cost efficiency. I created a metric a couple of years ago based on the work of Dr. William Sharp, a Nobel laureate out of Stanford, and
Sharp ratio.
and Mr. Ellis, Charlie Ellis, and but it doesn't have to be that simple. I think it's simple. People say, but that's basically what my metric, the active management value ratio, is. It's a cost benefit analysis. The difference is in the input data. We look at incremental cost and incremental returns, but that's the simplest way to do it. And as I said beforehand, the fact that the plan sponsors don't use cost benefit analysis, the information's freely available. If you're going to do, if it's regard to mutual funds, Morningstar, you only need 3 or 4 numbers to do the calculation. And I can tell you from trying cases, when I use my metric and show people 100 minus 1,000, 900, they grasp that. The courts don't allow ERISA cases to be heard by juries. My opinion is because they feel that if they hear it, they're going to act vengefully against, they're going to realize in their mind, hey, my plan's doing the same thing. But the 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 point is in all this is to, like I said beforehand, keep it simple. So cost benefit analysis is unbelievably simple. If it doesn't pass that, we have a rule, and I tell my clients the two-step process. Does ERISA specifically require whatever you're considering doing? And the answer is no. 404A is the operative section of ERISA, and it doesn't specify any specific investment. It only requires that whatever you do offer be prudent. And then the other thing is, if the investment in question doesn't outperform a comparable index, the inquiry stops there. There's no way you can argue a product that doesn't outperform an index is prudent. So that's what they need to do. I think the other thing I'm recommending is to go back to my original point. If you don't understand ERISA, then you either hire an ERISA attorney and they go, they're too expensive. And I go, you know how much it costs if you don't hire an ERISA attorney? And if they don't hire an ERISA attorney, hire someone who's experienced in the ERISA process, like Fiduciary Wise. I don't know how many combined years y'all have had, but I've been working with Don and, for a long time. In fact, I introduced Don to the restatement of trust. So,
and we, I don't know if you can see on my bookcase, but I've got volume 3 and volume 4 on my bookcase right now with Post-its all over it and my notes sticking out because I like to look stuff up after we've been talking all this time. And it's interesting. I think that it's an important, it is one of the backbones of running a plan.
Absolutely.
The plans are, people think, well, DOL runs the plans. That's part of it. Yes. IRS also has something to say about plans, about how to run a plan. And then the third restatement of trust, which is those 2 blue volumes on my, there are 4 of them, but 2 that pertain to us. Yeah. That's sort of our Bible, if you will, for this particular thing. And then, of course, so trust law, and then the ERISA law is what plans need to follow. And I think that's one of those things is just generally not known. For those of you who are listening, we're talking about Don, and our Don is Don Jones, who is the founding partner of Fiduciary Wise, someone revered in the industry. And I think, Jim, you asked about how many years we have among us. I really don't know, but some days I do feel it's like 1,000, just for my part. but it is Don is a very amazing person, and he's actually, we talked in one of these other podcasts, so hopefully people will get a chance to see Don Jones in action. He is a force of nature. So let's talk some more about the investments in plans and what plan sponsors can do. We've talked about delegation and the investment policy statement and quality, safety, and efficiency, and why expenses matter. What about some of the things that are coming up through different guidance from the DOL, for instance, target date funds in plans? They can be very convenient, and they are definitely something that has caught on among plan participants. The majority of people invested in plans seem to be invested in target date funds that correspond to their retirement date, because it's an easy thing to do and they don't have to worry too much about it if it's a high quality investment in that plan. But let's talk about, do you ever see cases where TDFs that were selected are being targeted by lawsuits?
They're absolutely targeted. And as we see more target date funds in and of themselves have issues, potential issues. regarding glide paths and things like that, we're going to start seeing a lot more litigation regarding target date funds that are including the annuity element in them.
Mm.
So, and we're starting to already see that. There are issues of what, with regard to the annuities, how do I get out? How do I exchange an annuity if I don't like it?
Right.
I've been exploring this for 3 months and I can't get anybody to tell me. You're in the industry. My question has been, can they exchange it via a 1035? And I'm
I don't
getting,
know. Yeah.
nobody knows apparently. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that bothers me as an attorney in a
Yeah.
risk management when nobody seems to know. Let somebody else be the guinea pig.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, and the other issue is, what are the terms of that annuity? Is there a reverter clause in the annuity? Because if you do a simple, I used to be a plaintiff's attorney and I had to do calculations regarding potential structured settlements.
Mm.
Most annuities are if someone annuitizes the annuity, and that's what we're hearing, stream of income, guaranteed income. But
Mm-hmm.
there's a bigger issue here in at what point, if the person it takes an annuity out of a TDF when they retire,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
at what point will they break even? At what point will they receive a commensurate return? The answer is usually it's going to be over 100 years, about 124 to 125 years. We're talking, I call this the Methuselah effect. And so there liability issues there because how many people are going to live to be 124, 125 years old?
Right. All right. Even though some people are projecting out the calculations for that, it's important to note that that people aren't living quite that long so far. So
Well, it
it's
raises the question of fiduciary duty of loyalty because whatever's left in the account is going to go to the insurer.
yeah, and
I've got
that's the thing because everything in ERISA really what all of the ERISA rules come down to is that everything that is done in a plan must be done solely and exclusively in the interest of the plan participants, no one else. And that is sort of uh, the golden rule of ERISA that everything must be done on behalf of the plan participant. Thankfully, when I was reading the government GAO survey,
General
government.
Accountability Office.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. When I was reading the report from the General Accountability Office, the GAO, on this topic, they said in the report. Now, this was done. It was a study done over 4 years and came out this summer, and they said that there hasn't been much uptake on the target date funds that have annuities in them so far, or other things that might be in them that people are debating about. I mean, other things that are non-securities, non-registered. So that is a little bit heartening because it kind of looks like things are not quite ready. These products are not quite ready for prime time, I would say, and so, but there are quite a few TDFs that do work well for participants. And so, with the ones that are just like the standard offering of an allocated group of assets in the funds that become less and less risky as you get toward retirement, it does seem to be something that plan participants have been enthusiastic about. And sometimes they're the qualified default investment. So that's another reason I think that they may be very popular. And we do sometimes see asset allocation models. Now, in my CFEX practice, I've seen, that where plans 338s who are working with a plan would take plan investment options and allocate let's say a conservative, a middle of the road balanced, and a more aggressive asset allocation made from the plan investment options, no additional charge, just as something that plan participants can use so that they don't have to allocate the assets themselves, because most plan participants don't know how to do that. So are you seeing a lot of those in your practice? Allocation?
I'm not really seeing a lot of them in mine. I'm seeing the more general issues of TDFs regarding fees. And especially, there was a study, and I'm not sure if it was a GAO, but it may have been Vanguard, pointing out that the concern right now is the fact that are all of the investment options within the TDF, do they meet the fiduciary prudence standard? And more so, an issue about the fact that there have been several studies that are showing increasingly the difference between to and through. A lot of the TDFs, supposedly based on these studies, they're seeing a very high equity exposure remaining at the time of a retirement, whereas it's supposed to be reduced by an increase to fixed income.
Right.
There's a concern here that we're not seeing that. And then therefore,
that's
you've got the
interesting
risk.
and scary. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I was saying that's interesting and a little scary. Yeah, and I have seen it too. The Government Accountability Office did write about that in the report as well, and that is something I think that didn't have a concrete conclusion, but something to kind of be aware of. Are there other things that you counsel plan sponsors to be aware of in terms of the investment selections? Not that they're doing, but their 338 or investment advisor are doing for the plan?
The main thing I harp on, and that's the word my clients say, you just harp on it. I do. Well, you tell me. Section 90.
I'm guilty too.
Section 90, to me, arguably the most important part of Section 90 are the comments. And comment F, even though the courts say that plan sponsors don't have a responsibility to choose the least expensive, comment F says the fiduciary has a duty to maximize or select a fund that has the highest return for a given level of risk and cost, or the lowest cost and risk for a given level of return.
Right.
But my favorite is H2, and it talks about the failure of most actively managed funds to return a commensurate return. I believe if something is not providing a commensurate return, there's no way that you can honestly argue that it's prudent. And so that's what I tell my clients, and they say it sticks in their heads. Is this commensurate? And again, if you go to cost benefit, I see way too many instances where the investment does not provide any incremental return, but causes the investor to incur
Extra
heavy
cost.
incremental cost.
Yeah.
And then they go, well, what are we supposed to do? I go, you don't understand that cost greater than benefits is imprudent? And then that's when I give them Fiduciary Wise's number and name.
Thank you.
It's not that hard. Jack Welch had one of my favorite sayings with regard to fiduciary wealth management and risk management is what Jack Welch said. Don't make the process more complicated than it is. And that is exactly what we're seeing now. There's a refusal on the part, or reluctance, whatever you want to call it, on the part of the plan sponsors to learn how to do their jobs and to retain the third parties to help them accomplish what they promise they're going to do for the plan participants. There's too much lack of transparency. To me, if you approach me with an investment that's opaque, I'm not going there. I've got a responsibility. Yeah. Smart people do not voluntarily assume unnecessary risk.
Yeah. Well, and I was very heartened to hear in recent hearings that the DOL had on this issue, an issue that we who are on the ERISA Advisory Council are studying, that plan sponsors overall are not generally gravitating to the kinds of TDFs or target dates funds that have embedded annuities and things in them right now. There's not a lot of uptake because the plan sponsors are hearing, they are understanding, and this is really important, I think, that that is not necessarily a prudent thing to add to the plan investment options. I was surprised to hear that, but I was also quite thrilled to hear that, because that means that plan sponsors are paying attention, and that many of them are getting good advice or good investment management if they're hiring a 338. And so that, I think that's a very heartening thing. All right, one last question, and this is, do you have 3 things that you tell your clients are 3 things that could keep them out of trouble when it comes to investments in their plan? Like the
I
top
actually
3
have
things.
more than 3, but I'll give you my key 3.
Okay.
And at the risk of repeating myself, don't voluntarily assume unnecessary risk. Cost-benefit analysis using my metric. And I'll tell you a little secret about that. I the other day I had a new client, and he said he met with his current plan advisor, and he told him, what I tell my clients to do is tell your advisor to go through the recommendations he made, run an AMVR analysis on all of them, and come back. And the client goes, well, he returned it. And I said, well, send it to me. He goes, no. I go, why? He goes, because he said he improved your metric. I go, nobody improves my metric. So stick with, along the lines of the IPS, develop a process, stick with it, keep it simple and smart, and either call you and get a copy of your restatement and read section 90. And if you don't understand it, find someone that can explain it to you. It's like, if you don't know the rules, then you don't know how or when you're violating them. So, and then the last would be focus on commensurate return. It's just that simple. If they're not getting their money's worth, and especially, I'd say 90% of the cases that I look at, the fund is not even beating a commensurate index fund. So that should tell you something right there.
We should have a podcast about the safe harbor that one of the court cases ended up with that talks about index funds being a safe harbor and a comparator for both active and passive funds. Maybe that's the topic of another podcast in the next season or something. Anyway, I want to thank you. Do you want to say something about that? Go ahead.
A lot of people misunderstand the Secure Act. The Secure Act does not give immunity to the plan sponsor. If the investment itself is imprudent, I'm seeing a lot of annuity people telling them you don't have any liability if you insert the annuity. And
Yikes.
I see we're almost over our time. So, but understand, Secure Act is not absolute immunity. It's immunity in the selection of the provider, but not for the product itself.
Thank you, Jim. I am so delighted to have you here. I was so looking forward to this, and I cannot wait till this is on the air. Thanks, everyone, for tuning into the Fiduciary Wise podcast. We'd love to hear your thoughts and answer your questions. So drop a comment or send us a message or schedule a meeting with us at fiduciarywise.com/scheduling. Don't forget to join us next time for more insights and discussions. See you in the next episode. Hi, I'm Kate McBride with Fiduciary Wise. We know that managing retirement plans comes with a lot of responsibility, and having the right knowledge is crucial to making the best decisions for your plan and participants. That's why at Fiduciary Wise, we don't just provide fiduciary services, we're committed to educating those who manage retirement plans through resources like the Fiduciary Wise Brief. Our program delivers expert insights to help you navigate the complexities of ERISA, compliance, and the fiduciary risk management. If you're finding value in what you're hearing in this podcast and want to take your understanding to the next level, let's continue the conversation. Reach out to us at fiduciarywise.com/scheduling and learn how we can support you with the knowledge and tools you need to confidently manage your plans.